The rule was older than anyone could remember. It was older than the oldest civilizations. It was older than most of the stars in the sky. For 11 billion years, every species that learned to travel between stars received the same message. The message came from ancient machines that floated in space, and it said only one thing: do not enter the Valen expanse. Nobody knew who built those machines. Nobody knew why the rule existed. But everyone followed it. The Cathari followed it. The Morvathi followed it. The Great Collective followed it. Every species in the galaxy, no matter how powerful or how wise, stayed away from that region of space. Then humans arrived. Captain Lara Bennett stood on the bridge of her ship, the ESV Horizon. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but those eyes held a fire that had never gone out. She had spent her whole life asking questions that nobody wanted to answer. Now she was about to ask the biggest question of all. How many warnings have we received? She asked her first officer. Commander Daniel Price checked his tablet. He was a tall man with a serious face, and right now that face looked worried. 47 in the last 2 hours. The Cathari say they will end all trade with Earth. The Morvathi say we are insane. The Collective sent us the word death, written 10,000 times. Did any of them tell us why we should not go? Daniel shook his head. No, they never do. They just say the rule exists and must be obeyed. Lavra walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere ahead, invisible from this distance, was the border of the Valen expanse. It looked like ordinary space. There were no warning signs, no barriers, nothing to show that anything was different. Just stars and empty darkness. Humanity had joined the galactic community 60 years ago. In that time, they had learned many things. They learned that the universe was very old and full of ancient species. They learned that these species had technology that seemed like magic. They learned that most of these species had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. But they also learned something else. They learned that these ancient species were afraid, not of enemies or disasters. They were afraid of questions. When humans asked why certain things were forbidden, the answer was always the same. The rule exists. It must be obeyed. When humans asked who made these rules, nobody could answer. When humans asked what would happen if the rules were broken, the ancient species simply looked away. Lavra had spent her career trying to understand this fear. She had studied dozens of prohibited zones, forbidden technologies, and banned experiments. And she had noticed something strange. None of the ancient species knew why these things were forbidden. They had simply been told not to do them, and they obeyed without asking God. It made no sense to her. How could a civilization that had survived for millions of years be so afraid of simple questions? "Captain," said Lieutenant Kevin Morris from the science station. He was young and nervous, barely 30 years old. "I have finished scanning the Valen expanse. There is nothing unusual about it. No dangerous radiation, no strange gravity, no signs of any threat. It looks completely normal, which makes the prohibition even more strange," Lavra said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small photograph. It showed a young girl with a big smile, maybe 8 years old. Her granddaughter. The last time they spoke, the girl had asked Laura why she wanted to be an astronaut. "Because I need to know," Laura had told her. "Because the question matters more than the answer." Laura put the photograph away and turned to face her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for her decision. She could see the fear in some of their faces. She could also see the curiosity. "I want everyone to understand what we are about to do," Lavra said. "For 11 billion years, every species in the galaxy has obeyed this rule. They have stayed away from the Valen expanse without ever knowing why. They have accepted the prohibition without question." She paused, looking at each face in turn. But that is not who we are. Humanity did not build cities by accepting limits. We did not cure diseases by obeying rules we did not understand. We did not reach the stars by being afraid of the unknown. Daniel stepped closer. Captain, I need to ask. Are you sure about this? If we go in there and something happens, it could affect all of humanity. Every other species is watching us. Let them watch, Lavra said. Let them see what happens when someone finally asks why. She sat down in her captain's chair and looked at the main screen. The vast expanse waited ahead, dark and silent and mysterious. Set course for the boundary, she ordered. We are going in. The ship hummed as it prepared to jump. All across the galaxy, thousands of species watched their screens in horror. The humans had been warned. They had been told. But they were going anyway. Nobody could stop them now. As the HFY horizon approached the Forbidden Zone, Lavra felt something she had not felt in years. It was not fear, though there was some of that too. It was excitement. Pure, simple excitement. For 60 years, humanity had lived under the shadow of ancient rules they did not make and could not understand. They had been treated like children, told to obey without explanation. The older species looked down on them, called them young and foolish, said they would learn wisdom in time. But wisdom was not about blind obedience. Wisdom was about understanding. Approaching the boundary, Kevin announced. His voice was shaking. 10 seconds. Lavra gripped the arms of her chair. Around her, the bridge crew held their breath. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. The ship crossed the invisible line. Nothing happened. The stars looked the same. The sensors showed nothing unusual. The ancient warning beacons, which had screamed their messages for billions of years, suddenly went silent. We are inside, Daniel said quietly. We did it. Laura stood up slowly. Her heart was beating fast, but her voice was calm. No, she said. We have not done anything yet. We have only taken the first step. She looked out at the forbidden space stretching before them, full of secrets that had waited 11 billion years to be discovered. Now we find out why. For 3 days, they found nothing. The HFY horizon moved deeper into the vast expanse, scanning every star, every planet, every piece of empty space. Kevin worked without sleep, searching for anything that might explain why this region had been forbidden for 11 billion years. He found nothing unusual, just ordinary stars and ordinary planets, floating in ordinary darkness. The crew began to wonder if the whole thing was a mistake. Maybe the danger is gone, suggested Lieutenant Susan Grant from the communications station. She was a practical woman who did not like mysteries. Whatever was here, maybe it died or left a long time ago. Then, why are the beacons still active? Daniel asked. Someone is maintaining them. Someone wants the prohibition to continue. The beacons are automatic, Kevin said. They could run for billions of years without anyone checking on them. Lavra listened to her crew debate, but she did not join the conversation. She was watching the sensors, waiting for something to appear. She had a feeling that they had not come all this way for nothing. On the 4th day, her feeling proved correct. Captain, Kevin said suddenly. His voice was strange, like he could not believe what he was seeing. I am detecting a structure ahead. It is in orbit around a gas giant. Lavra moved to his station and looked at the screen. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. It was a ring. A massive ring of metal and crystal, floating in space like a crown around the planet below. The ring was at least 1,000 kilometers wide, bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Bigger than anything any known species had ever built. How old is it? Lavra asked. Kevin ran his calculations 3 times before answering. Based on dust accumulation and radiation damage, I estimate the structure is approximately 12 billion years old. 12 billion years. The universe itself was only 14 billion years old. This thing had been built when the cosmos was still young, before most stars had formed, before any known civilization existed. It appears to be inactive, Kevin continued. No power signatures, no energy emissions. Whatever it was, it stopped working a long time ago. But it is still here, Daniel said quietly. After 12 billion years, it is still here. Laura made her decision without hesitation. Prepare a shuttle. We are going aboard. The away team consisted of Laura, Kevin, Dr. Nina Martinez, the ship's expert in alien cultures, and a security team led by Sergeant Ryan Cooper. They wore heavy environmental suits and carried every piece of scanning equipment they could fit in the shuttle pod. As they approached the ring, Laura felt very small. The structure was so big that she could not see the ends of it. It curved away in both directions, disappearing into the darkness. The surface was covered in patterns she did not recognize, shapes that might have been writing or decoration or something else entirely. There is an opening ahead, Ryan reported from the pilot's seat. It looks like a docking port. Take us in. The interior of the ring was even more impressive than the outside. Corridors stretched away in every direction, wide enough to fly a shuttle through. The walls were covered in symbols, complex patterns that seemed to shift and change as their lights moved over them. Nina was already recording everything, her eyes wide with wonder. This is incredible. I've never seen anything like this. The symbols are not related to any known galactic language. This was built by someone else. Someone who came before. They walked for hours, exploring the empty corridors, documenting everything they found. The ring was like a frozen city, full of rooms and chambers and passages that had not seen visitors for billions of years. Dust covered every surface. The air was cold and still. Then they found the central chamber dot. It was a sphere, almost a kilometer across, located at the exact center of the ring. The walls were covered in more symbols, but these were different. They were bigger, more elaborate, and they seemed to tell a story. But the most remarkable thing was floating in the middle of the chamber dot. It looked like a seed. A dark oval shape, about the size of a human head, suspended in empty air by forces they could not detect. It hung perfectly still, neither falling nor floating away, just waiting. Kevin scanned it with every instrument he had. I do not understand these readings. This object is generating energy, but not like any power source I have ever seen. It seems to be pulling power directly from space itself. Is it dangerous? Laura asked. I do not think so. It is not producing radiation or any harmful emissions. It is just there, like it is waiting for something. Nina had moved closer to the walls, studying the symbols with intense concentration. Her face had gone pale, and her hands were shaking. Captain, she said quietly, I think I understand some of this. Laura walked over to stand beside her. What does it say? Nina pointed at a series of images carved into the wall. They showed tall, beautiful creatures made of light, working with machines that looked like the ring around them. They showed these creatures spreading across the galaxy, touching world after world. And then they showed something else. Something darker. These symbols are designed to be understood by any intelligent species, Nina explained. They use mathematics and universal concepts to communicate. It is slow, but I can read parts of it. She turned to face Laura, and her eyes were full of something that might have been fear or wonder or both. This place is a message, Captain. A message left by whoever built this ring, whoever created the prohibition, whoever put that seed in the center of this chamber. They left it here because they wanted someone to find it. What does the message say? Nina looked back at the walls, at the images of ancient creatures and forgotten machines. It says why the Valen Expanse was forbidden. It tells the story of who built this place and what happened to them. And it explains what we are supposed to do now that we are here. Lavra felt her heart beating faster. 11 billion years. The rule had existed for 11 billion years, and now they were about to learn the truth behind it. Tell me everything, she said. Nina nodded slowly. I will need time to translate it all. Days, maybe weeks. But I can tell you the beginning. She pointed at the first image on the wall, the tall creatures of light standing beneath young stars. They called themselves the gardeners. And they created us. All of us. Every species in the galaxy. The words hung in the cold air of the chamber. Laura looked at the floating seed, at the ancient symbols, at the impossible structure around her dot. Everything humanity thought they knew about the universe was about to change. Nini worked without rest for 2 weeks. She ate little and slept less, spending every hour studying the symbols on the walls of the ancient chamber. The crew brought her food and water, but she barely noticed. She was lost in a story that had waited 12 billion years to be told. When she finally called everyone together, she looked like she had aged 10 years. Her eyes were tired, her hands still shaking, but her voice was strong. I have translated enough to understand what happened, she said. And I have to warn you. What I am about to tell you will change everything. The crew gathered around her in the main conference room. Captain Laura Bennett sat at the head of the table, watching Nina with calm patience. She had waited this long. She could wait a little longer. Nina took a deep breath and began. When the universe was very young, only about 2 billion years old, a species evolved on a small planet near the center of the galaxy. They were the first intelligent beings to exist anywhere. For millions of years, they were completely alone. She pulled up an image on the main screen. It showed the creatures from the wall carvings, tall and graceful, their bodies glowing with soft light. They were beautiful in a way that was hard to describe. They called themselves the first gardeners. They spent millions of years exploring the young universe, trying to understand why they existed. They asked the same questions we ask. Why is there something instead of nothing? What is the purpose of intelligence? Why are we here? Eventually, they came to a conclusion. They decided that consciousness itself was the most valuable thing in existence. They believed that their purpose was to help more consciousness grow. They wanted to fill the universe with thinking, feeling beings. Daniel leaned forward. They wanted to create life? More than that, Nina said. They wanted to create the conditions that allow life to evolve naturally. They built machines that could change planets, making them suitable for life. They developed technology that could seed worlds with the basic building blocks of biology. Then they spread these machines across the entire galaxy. She changed the image on the screen. It showed thousands of ring structures, just like the one they had found, scattered among the stars. Every one of these machines was designed to create a world where intelligent life could eventually evolve. The gardeners did not want to build life directly. They wanted to plant seeds and let nature do the rest. They believed that life grown naturally would be stronger and wiser than life created artificially. Kevin's face was pale. You are saying that Earth, that humans, that every species we have ever met, we all exist because of these machines? Yes, without the gardeners, the galaxy would be empty. They are the reason any of us are here. Lavra spoke for the first time. What happened to them? Where are they now? Nina's expression grew dark. That is where the story becomes sad. The gardeners made a terrible mistake. She showed another image. This one was harder to look at. It showed creatures that were almost like the gardeners, but twisted and wrong. Their light had become darkness. Their grace had become something hungry and violent. The gardeners were patient, but they were also curious. They wanted to see the results of their work. So they decided to try something different. On one world, they tried to speed up evolution. They wanted to create intelligent life quickly, so they could watch it grow. It worked. In only a few million years, a new species evolved. They were brilliant and powerful, more advanced than any species the gardeners had created naturally. But there was something wrong with them. They called themselves the Devourers. The room was silent. Everyone was staring at the twisted images on the screen. Natural evolution is slow, Nina continued. It takes billions of years. During that time, species develop not just intelligence but wisdom. They learn patience. They learn empathy. They learn to live with others. The Devourers skipped all of that. They were intelligent but not wise. They were powerful but not kind. The Devourers saw the universe differently than the gardeners. Where the gardeners wanted to create, the Devourers wanted to consume. Where the gardeners saw life as precious, the Devourers saw it as a resource to be used. They began to conquer other worlds, other species, taking everything for themselves. A war began. It lasted for millions of years. The gardeners had technology beyond anything we can imagine, but the Devourers were strong and ruthless. By the time the war ended, most of both species were dead. The galaxy was in ruins. Susan's voice was barely a whisper. Who won? The gardeners won, but at a terrible cost. Only a few thousand of them survived. Their civilization was destroyed, and they had learned a horrible lesson. They had created the very thing they feared most. Their impatience had nearly destroyed everything. Minya walked to the window and looked out at the stars. The surviving gardeners gathered their remaining technology and brought it here, to the Valan Expanse. They built the ring structures to house their knowledge. Then they created the Prohibition. They programmed the warning beacons to keep everyone away. But why? Lavra asked. If they wanted to protect the galaxy, why not destroy everything? Why leave it here where someone might find it? Nina turned back to face her. Because they were not trying to hide their legacy. They were waiting for someone worthy to claim it. She pointed at the screen, which now showed the floating seed they had found in the central chamber. That object contains everything. All the knowledge of the gardeners, all their technology, all their wisdom. It is the instruction manual for creating life across the entire galaxy. They left it here as a test. A test of what? Daniel demanded. A test of curiosity, Nina said. The gardeners knew that someday some species would break the rule. They would be curious enough, brave enough, stubborn enough to ignore every warning and find this place. That species would be different from all the others. They would have the one quality the gardeners valued most, the willingness to ask why. Lavra stood up slowly. The weight of what she was hearing pressed down on her like a physical force. They wanted someone like us, she said quietly. Someone who would not just obey the rule. Someone who would question it. Exactly, Minya said. Every other species in the galaxy accepted the prohibition without understanding it. They followed the rule because they were told to follow it. But the gardeners did not want followers. They wanted successors. They wanted a species that would ask questions, challenge assumptions, seek truth, even when it was forbidden. They wanted humans. The words seemed to echo in the silent room. Lavra looked at her crew, at their shocked faces and wide eyes. So, what do we do now? Kevin asked. Lavra looked at the image of the seed on the screen. Inside that small object was the power to create worlds, to fill the galaxy with life. To continue the work the gardeners had started 12 billion years ago. It was the greatest gift anyone had ever been offered. It was also the greatest responsibility. Now, Lavra said slowly, we decide what kind of species we want to be. The debate lasted for 5 days. Every member of the crew had an opinion. Some wanted to use the seed immediately. Some wanted to destroy it. Some wanted to give it to the older species. Some wanted to hide it forever. Everyone had reasons for their position, and everyone believed they were right. Laura listened to all of them. She did not interrupt or argue. She just listened. "We should destroy it," Daniel said on the first day. "The gardeners created the devourers by accident. What if we make the same mistake? What if we create something worse?" "But the gardeners wanted someone to find this," Nina argued. "They built the test specifically to identify a species worthy of their legacy. If we destroy it, we betray everything they worked for." "We are one species among thousands," Kevin said. "How can we make this decision alone? The other civilizations have been in space for millions of years. They have wisdom we cannot imagine. They also have fear," Susan pointed out. "They followed the rule for 11 billion years without ever asking why. If we give them the seed, they might destroy it out of fear." "Maybe that would be the right choice," said Ryan from the security team. "Maybe some things should stay hidden." Laura let them argue. She wanted everyone to speak their mind, to express their hopes and fears without holding back. This was not a decision that should be made quickly or quietly. On the third day, she finally asked a question. "What would you do if you had the power to create life across the galaxy? If you could turn empty worlds into gardens, if you could fill the universe with intelligent beings, what would you do with that power?" The room went quiet. "I would be careful," Kevin said after a long pause. "I would study everything first. I would make sure I understood the technology completely before using it. I would share it," Nina said. "Not the power itself, but the knowledge. I would tell everyone what we found and let them help decide. I would protect it," Daniel said. "I would make sure no one could misuse it, no matter what that required." Laura nodded slowly. "All of those are good answers, but none of them answer the real question." She stood up and walked to the window. The stars of the Valen expanse stretched out before her, millions of points of light in the endless darkness. The gardeners made a mistake because they were impatient. They wanted to see results, so they rushed the process. They created intelligence without wisdom, power without understanding. That is why the devourers happened. She turned to face her crew. "We could make the same mistake. We could use this technology now, before we are ready. We could create new species, terraform new worlds, spread life across the galaxy. And in our eagerness, we could create something terrible. But we could also make the opposite mistake. We could be so afraid of failure that we never try at all. We could hide the seed, destroy it, pretend we never found it. And the galaxy would continue as it has for 11 billion years, empty and waiting for someone who never comes. Neither of those choices is right." Daniel frowned. "Then what do you suggest?" Laura smiled slightly. It was the first time she had smiled in days. "I suggest we do what humans have always done. We learn. We grow. We prepare. And when we are ready, not before, we act." She walked back to the table and sat down. "We will take the seed back to Earth. We will study it and the technology that created it. We will share what we have learned with every species in the galaxy. Not the power itself, but the story. The truth about where we all came from. And then we will wait. We will let the galaxy decide together whether to use this gift. We will not force it on anyone. We will not keep it secret. We will simply tell the truth and let others make their own choices." "That could take centuries," Kevin said. "Maybe thousands of years." "Then it takes thousands of years," Laura replied. "The gardeners waited billions of years for someone to find their gift. We can wait a few centuries to use it wisely." Susan leaned forward. "What about the other species? The Kethari, the Morvathi, the Collective? They will be angry that we broke the rule. Let them be angry, but also let them hear the truth. When they understand why the rule existed, When they learn about the gardeners and the test, they will have to make a choice. They can continue to follow rules without understanding them, or they can join us in asking why. Nina was nodding slowly. You want to change the galaxy. Not by force, but by example. I want to finish what the gardeners started, Laura said. They created the conditions for intelligence to evolve. Now it is time for that intelligence to grow up. To stop being children who obey without thinking and become adults who question and learn and choose. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then, one by one, the crew members began to nod. Daniel was the last. He looked at Laura with a mixture of respect and concern. This is a big risk, he said. If it goes wrong, history will blame us. If it goes wrong, Laura agreed. But if it goes right, history will thank us. And I would rather take a risk for something important than play it safe for something meaningless. She stood up again, looking at each of her officers in turn. We came here because we asked a question no one else would ask. We found the answer, and now we have a responsibility. Not to use this power for ourselves, but to share it with everyone who is ready to receive it. The gardeners trusted us to find this place. Now we have to trust the galaxy to handle what we found. Daniel stood up and extended his hand. Laura shook it. All right, Captain, he said. Let us go change the universe. The crew returned to the central chamber one last time. Laura stood before the floating seed, looking at the small object that contained so much power. We will be back, she said quietly, when we are ready. When everyone is ready. The seed hung in silence, waiting as it had waited for 12 billion years. They took it with them when they left. The journey home would take weeks, and when they arrived, nothing would ever be the same. But that was exactly what Laura wanted. Humanity had broken the oldest rule in the galaxy. Now, they would show everyone why it needed to be broken. The return of the HFY horizon changed everything. At first, the reaction was exactly what Laura expected. The Kadari called for humanity to be punished. The Morvathi demanded the seed be destroyed. The collective broadcast warnings across every communication channel, telling other species to stay away from the dangerous humans. Laura ignored all of it. She had a story to tell, and she would not stop until everyone had heard it. She spoke to the Galactic Council, the assembly of all known species. She showed them the recordings from the Valen Expanse. She told them about the gardeners, about the devourers, about the test that had waited 11 billion years for someone to pass it. Most of the older species refused to believe her. They said she was lying. They said the recordings were fake. They said humanity was trying to trick everyone for its own benefit. But the younger species listened. The Rathani, who had only been traveling between stars for 3,000 years, sent a delegation to Earth. They wanted to see the seed for themselves. They wanted to hear the story from Laura directly. Why did you do it? The Rathani leader asked her. Why did you break the rule when everyone told you not to? Laura smiled. Because we needed to know. Because following a rule you do not understand is not wisdom. It is just fear with a better name. The Rathani leader thought about this for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. We have always followed the rules of the older species, he said. They are wiser than us, we thought. They know things we do not know. But perhaps wisdom is not about knowing all the answers. Perhaps it is about having the courage to ask questions. Within a year, a dozen younger species had joined humanity in demanding the truth be shared with everyone. They formed an alliance based not on power or trade, but on a simple principle. No rule should exist without a reason. No prohibition should continue without explanation. The older species resisted. For millions of years, they have been the leaders of the galaxy. They had created the laws, set the standards, decided what was allowed and what was forbidden. The idea that a young species like humanity could challenge their authority was unthinkable, but the truth was stronger than authority. One by one, the older species began to change their minds. The first was the architects, the oldest civilization anyone knew. Their speaker came to Earth 10 years after the Horizon returned, and stood before the assembled representatives of 100 worlds. "We were wrong," the speaker said. The words seemed to cause physical pain, as if admitting error was the hardest thing the architects had ever done. "For 11 billion years, we followed a rule we did not understand. We told ourselves it was wisdom. We told ourselves that something should not be questioned. But we were simply afraid." The architect turned to Lara, who was now old and gray, but still sharp as ever. "You were right to break the rule. You were right to ask why. We should have done it long ago." After that, the change came faster. Species that had been enemies for millions of years found common ground in their shared origin. The story of the gardeners spread across the galaxy. Carried by humans who refused to let the truth be hidden, the seed was kept on Earth's moon, protected by the best security humanity and its allies could provide. Scholars from hundreds of worlds studied it, slowly learning the secrets it contained. But they did not use it. "Not yet. We will know when we are ready," Lara said to everyone who asked. "And when that time comes, we will act together." Lara did not live to see the seed opened. She died peacefully at the age of 94, surrounded by her family. Her last words were to her great-granddaughter, a young woman named Claire, who had just been accepted into the Space Exploration Service. "Keep asking why," Lara whispered. "Never stop. Promise me." "I promise, Grandma." 300 years passed. The galaxy changed in ways Lara could never have imagined. Humans and other species worked together on projects that seemed impossible. Diseases were cured. Barren worlds were made green. The old divisions between species slowly faded away. And finally, the day came. Representatives from every known civilization gathered on Earth's moon. The seed was brought out of its vault and placed in the center of a great chamber. Everyone watched as the eldest human present, a woman who was the direct descendant of Lara Bennett, stepped forward. "For 300 years, we have studied this gift," she said. "We have learned its secrets. We have debated its use. And we have grown. All of us, together." She looked around the chamber at the thousands of beings who had come from across the galaxy. The gardeners left this for us because they believed that someday the galaxy would be ready to continue their work. They believed that intelligence could learn wisdom, that curiosity could be matched with responsibility, that the children they created could become adults. Today, we proved them right. She touched the seed gently. It began to glow, slowly at first, then brighter and brighter until the whole chamber was filled with warm light, and then it spoke. The voice was not loud, but everyone heard it. It was not in any single language, but everyone understood it. It was the voice of the gardeners, recorded 12 billion years ago, waiting all this time to deliver its final message. "You are ready. We created you, but you have grown beyond us. We gave you life, but you have given that life meaning. We were the first gardeners, but you will be the last. From this day forward, the galaxy belongs to you. Use it well. Create. Grow. Ask every question. Challenge every assumption. Break every rule that needs to be broken. And when you find new life, when you discover new worlds, when you meet species we never imagined, remember where you came from. Remember that you were once the children. Now you are the parents." The light faded slowly. The seed had given its message and its gifts. The knowledge of the gardeners flowed into the minds of everyone present, gently and carefully, waiting to be used when they chose. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then someone began to clap. Then another. Then 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 beings across 1,000,000 worlds, all celebrating the moment when the galaxy finally grew up. On Earth, a young girl watched the celebration on her screen. She was maybe 8 years old, with curious eyes and a stubborn jaw that reminded everyone of her famous ancestor. "Mom," she said, "why is everyone so happy?" Her mother sat down beside her and smiled. "Because today we learned something important. We learned that rules are made by people, and people can be wrong. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask why." The girl thought about this for a moment. Then she grinned. "Can I help make new rules someday?" "Absolutely," her mother said. "That is the whole point." And together, they watched the stars shine overhead, full of possibilities that stretched beyond imagination, waiting to be discovered by anyone brave enough to ask why. 11 billion years ago, the Dardanelles planted seeds across the galaxy. They hoped those seeds would grow into something wonderful. Today, their hope came true, not because of technology or power or ancient wisdom, because one small species on one small planet refused to accept rules without reasons, because humans asked why. And finally learned the answer.